So just as people are starting to arrive and just settle in and get their webcam sorted, I just made a suggestion that if you haven't updated your name to reflect who you are and maybe your organisation's name, if you just hover over your image on Zoom and click the three dots, you've got an option to rename. So that way, just if people want to talk to each other, or you spot someone from an organisation you're interested in talking to, it's just a good opportunity to let people know where you're from. So thank you everyone for joining this particular session, Reboot Digital Burnley. We anticipate this going on for between an hour and an hour and 15 minutes. And just a quick run through of not rules, but if we can just, while we are talking to the panel, if people can put themselves on mute, not the panelists, but everyone else within the conversation. But by all means, keep your camera on. Always good to see a face. Certainly as panelists, it's sometimes quite difficult to gauge a reaction or try and work out which way to take the conversation. So if anyone does have a question that they or a thought or a viewpoint and they would like to chip in, by all means, if while we're talking to the panelists, pop it in the chat pane on the right hand side. Joe and myself will be looking to try and field those questions back to the panel as we go, and of course we'll make time at the end to open the floor for discussion, for Q&A, to try and tease the important sessions, things about the session out, and just to let people know and be aware the session is being recorded. We're trying to capture as much information and qualitative data about these areas of Lancashire, these sectors, as much as possible. So thank you everyone for joining us today for Reboot Digital Burnley. Thanks for the panelists, thanks to everyone who's turned up, and of course thanks to our sponsors. Just to give everyone attending and the panelists a bit of insight into what we as Digital Lancashire are hoping to achieve from this session. We would like to be able to finish this conversation with a much clearer picture about the digital sector within Burnley. So thinking about things like the issues, thinking about the challenges, but also conversely thinking about the success stories, the ambassadors, the good things, and everything that makes Burnley the strong digital sector that it is, so that after today, as Digital Lancashire, and for everyone who's participating today, we have a better understanding of where we can go to for whatever that thing is we need, whether it's support, whether it's for introductions, whether it's for collaboration. So that's really at the heart of this session, and that's really what is at the heart of Digital Lancashire's Reboot 2020 series. It's really for us to take a breath, because 2020, let's face it, it's been weird and it's been difficult, and it's a chance for us to appraise what then, what now, and what next. So before I jump into a line of inquiry, I am going to get the panel to introduce themselves. I do have their bios. I asked them to send them to them, but I'm going to take a step back, and in the order in which they're in front of me, if I can get you guys to introduce yourselves, starting with you, Leon, if you can let us know who you are and what it is you do on a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'm Leon Calverley. I know a good few of you in the audience today. I run a business called Door 4 here in Burnley, and I'm here in our offices right now. We're a digital performance agency, so we work with e-commerce and lead gen brands to optimize experience with what we call reach, convert, and scale. See it up there on our website, which I've strategically positioned in shot. We work with clients all over the country. Quite a lot of our clients are regional, northwest, so we definitely feel we've got a connection here to Burnley. We've kept our headquarters here despite flirting, if I can say that, with presence in Manchester and being more of a capital-based business over the years. There's 18 of us here at our HQ, and we want Burnley to continue to be a strong, vibrant heartland for our team and for our agency.
Perfect, thank you, Leon. And over to Ben Whitaker.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Whittaker. I am a curriculum manager and digital transformation lead, whatever that means, at Burnley College. We have just over 4,000 full-time students in Burnley, as well as apprentices and adult learners as well. So the total number is around about 8,000 learners. So in terms of what that looks like, we've got a big market of people that obviously are going to be coming into some of your industries, as well as kind of supporting what the transformation looks like. So my role I look after a suite of apprenticeships in computing, digital, as well as the creative industries and business. But I'm also in the kind of the job role that I do is looking at what does digital look like in education. And we're kind of transforming towards being a Google reference college and using the Google for Education suite of skills for learners to use. So that's that. Outside of this place, I run a podcast called EduFuturist, where I talk about the future of education in light of the digital revolution and Industry 4.0 and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, thank you, Ben. Adam Holden.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam Holden from Burnley Council. I'm not directly involved in digital support, but a lot of my day-to-day involves with linking up businesses with public sector support. We've had quite a busy few months, like you said, a weird few months working with the COVID-19 business support grants and getting those out to businesses. So I suppose my role going forwards now is to act as a bit of a conduit, go-between between business and public sector support. There's quite a lot of small bits of funding on the horizon that we're going to look to be linking in with businesses, and it's really important for people like me to keep in touch with the kind of the digital people and all the other businesses as well, really, to make sure that we kind of move together forwards through what we've got at the minute. So yeah, that's about it.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Liz Wilkinson.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know quite a few faces, but you might not know me. So I am the General Manager at the Landmark in Burnley Town Centre, based in the old Burnley Grammar School building. And it's essentially a business club. We've got loads of facilities on site, from co-working space to meeting facilities, conference facilities and event space. And we are a site partner of Barclays Eagle Lab. Paddy Byrne, who is on the conversation somewhere, is our resident Barclays Eagle representative. And so we, with that partnership, help with scaling up businesses, some business incubation services. We also work with their makerspace over at Salford currently. So we offer new businesses and growing businesses support and sort of signpost various people from that.
Thank you very much. And a brief introduction to me, because I'm going to be the one who's fielding, chairing and picking on people to try and tease out the answers and insights. My name's Tom Stables. I'm the current chair of Digital Lancashire. We're the organisation behind Reboot 2020. And hopefully everyone is familiar with us to some degree. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation, and our raison d'etre, our purpose is really to accelerate the digital economy in Lancashire, to put a spotlight on all the good things we do, to join the dots in a number of ways. And all I would say on that is, if people haven't yet seen our manifesto, and we've been promoting it actively through the Reboot 2020 series, we'll in the follow-up email there'll be links on where to find that, but please do have a look at the manifesto, because one of the key things we're looking to develop out of Reboot is to, well, ultimately not entirely reshape, but inform our manifesto. We think we've got a good handle on what and where the issues where we can support are, but it's everyone who's in the room here today that actually has that real insight for us. So with that in mind, and if I can come to you, Leon, with my first question, and thinking an inevitable question around the last 6 months, because I think it's good to take a bit of a brief retrospective. So how has the last 6 months been for you, for your organisation? And I suppose really, and how do you feel it's been in Burnley, just as a general sense check?
Okay, I mean, it's easy to speak directly on a personal level first, of course. Door4, we're a digital agency. We work with e-commerce businesses. that sector has been pretty strong over the last 6 months. So, you know, we're just looking inside at Door 4's performance. We've had a pretty decent 6 months, really. We are fortunate enough commercially to work with sectors and categories that haven't been too adversely affected. So e-commerce, retail, home and garden have done well. We do have a few clients in leisure, in the hospitality industries, but it's a very small proportion. So, and property, commercial property, another sector that's been hit. So if we look at what happened in March, we saw a few of our clients and opportunities go off a cliff, as I'm sure other people in our sector have. But at the same time, then over the next 6 months, we've seen a number of categories grow and a number of clients emerge. And we've probably come out as a net benefit, if I'm entirely honest, in our sector. And I think in employment as a whole, I think what the last 6 months have been pretty good for has been staff retention. If I'm being candid there, I think there's not been an awful lot of movement of talent around in the last few months. We have hired, we've got two people, hopefully, one definitely starting and one that we're hoping is going to be starting with us in the next couple of weeks. So we are finding people. I know that not every sector has been successful. I've spoken to people in agencies and particularly in traditional marketing companies where they've found it difficult for finding new opportunities. They've seen the clients disappear. Certainly in the more traditional communications, brand, and dare I say, broader marketing, that is non-digital, non-performance sectors, they've struggled. So what we've actually used this last few months to really rework our own value proposition, really look at where we fit into our customers' needs, which of our services are still relevant, which are the growth areas, in particular where we can specialize and move up the value chain. So we've got a few very, very live active processes going on, some internal and some with external partners to improve the business. Second part of that was a lot of words. Second part of that is Burnley, I think in our scene again has done all right. Burnley's got a pretty decent, thriving digital sector. That's why we're all here. I think as a town, we're a manufacturing and traditional service sector town, so we probably have struggled as a town. The problem is with lockdown, you don't really see much of what else is going on. So I think it's quite a difficult question to answer in that kind of macroeconomic and macro political standpoint, really. We've probably struggled a little bit as a town, though, I would say.
Yeah, I appreciate it is quite difficult. So, Adam, if I can bring you into this one, in terms of, I suppose, in context of business support, and you talked about being a conduit, is what Leon said, have you seen that reflected in so much as there's been certain areas of opportunity for some people, and what sort of balance has that been in Burnley in your experience of the businesses that you support?
Yeah, we did a business survey. We put out a business survey a month or two back now, and the general feedback from it was pretty good. We asked a lot of questions around businesses that would be, would you be expecting to afford to take people off furlough and things like that, and there were quite a high percentage of local businesses that actually didn't furlough anyone, and the ones that did were almost 100% expecting to be able to take people off furlough and bring them back into the business. So kind of, like say, agreeing with what Leon said, really, it was quite a positive picture on the overall, between what we were looking at, and yeah, I think as far as kind of opportunities are concerned, that from a council point of view, we've had quite a few people, some digital businesses that are looking to move and expand, and there's been a steady flow of interest on that front. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's difficult to kind of get a full picture until we come to the end of furlough and things like that. But kind of looking at it, it looks better than we expected, really. I would say on that one.
And Liz, with life at the Landmark, and I suppose the transient businesses that go on in there, and residents, what's the last 6 months been like? I'd imagine it's been quite a complicated picture at the Landmark, or has it?
Yeah, it's been a funny one really, because you would expect that generally, I think, and again, tapping into what Leon and Adam just said, some businesses have found that it's sort of got busier for them. Some businesses have completely dropped off the edge, which is tragic. But what it has done is meant that people have changed the way they've had to work and adapt. And so for us, it's sort of peaks and troughs. We have really busy periods of people sort of saying, well, the timeline of it, lockdown, then sort of semi-lockdown, and then kind of out of it and then back into it. It's very up and down, but generally positive. We've found, and especially, I think the last time I looked at the numbers, there were 600 thereabouts brand new startup companies that happened within lockdown just in Burnley, which from our point of view is brilliant, because it means that something positive is happening and it's going in the right direction. And from a landmark point of view, just getting more and more people through the door that are working more flexibly. So yeah, it's really hard to just sort of give one answer. It's
a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things.
So with Ben, if I can come to you, because obviously in terms of from an academic viewpoint, I'd imagine that the challenge has been very different, both in terms of the remote access and all the implications that has. I've got two children of high school age, and I'll be honest with you, it's been really, really tough. Not tough in a sense of, I trust they can do the work, but just in terms of being a worker and a teacher and all of the things in between. So as someone who's working on the other side of the academia, what has the last 6 months been for you in terms of the challenges in a digital context?
I think I have a colleague who says there are no issues in education, there's just challenges, and I think this has been a big one. Essentially, the biggest challenge really is we had 2 days to prepare staff and students to that we were going to be going remote. So that was a huge thing. So to train almost 400 staff on how to deliver remotely, to put a plan together to get laptops and Wi-Fi into every student's and staff members' hands was a challenge. And then I became overnight like an IT help desk. So everything that could go wrong in terms of doing a Zoom call or a Google Meet call or whatever else it was, I was doing that. But essentially, the biggest challenge really, and I think this is what I would bring it down to, is it's not that staff were willing to try, students were willing to try. The difficulty was around ensuring engagement. Because it's all right, nice, and when you've got a teacher who's just going to go onto a video call and just replace what would have been in the classroom. What actually happened was the things that really mattered to students about social contact, the things around like practical elements, and like how do you teach dance over Zoom? Well, we tried, and we actually had an article published in TESS about how one of our dance lecturers had used TikTok as the way to teach A-level dance, and it was really well received, actually, to be fair. But how do you teach joinery and welding that way? So that's been the challenge, and how we've tried, because as a college we've been quite proud that the building has stayed open for our most vulnerable students, and for the students that needed professional qualifications in terms of like things like joinery and engineering. But we've obviously had to do that quite differently, and that has been, as that word comes out, has been a challenge.
Yeah, well, but it also forces our hand when it comes to innovation. Certainly, quite timely with Lancashire Innovation Month happening. So, really encouraging to hear those stories. Sometimes often it's born out of necessity, finding ways to do things. I think the TikTok thing is incredible, which I'm not going to tell my daughter that, because she's on a TikTok break at the minute, kind of enforced by me. Different story. Anyway. As someone from Preston, apologies, I know I know many of the things that businesses, digital ones in particular, have faced pre-pandemic. So this is over the last few years. There's a number of things that are an issue to Preston, and I'm not going to get too stuck in a narrative today around Lancashire and it being disparate and it having several identities. Let's all agree that we have those, that Burnley is really good at being Burnley and Preston is really good at being Preston. So let's just put that there. But what I'm interested in is pre-pandemic and pre-everything going upside down, what were the key challenges? What were the main issues facing digital businesses and organisations in Burnley that were perhaps a constant and something that may or may not be able to fix? And Leon, if I can come back to you with that one.
I break it into three things. I think the challenge that we face as a digital industry business in Burnley is one, perception of Lancashire and Burnley as a place that a business like us would exist rather than Manchester. Yeah. And Manchester has the same in creative and media and technology against London. So there's a cascade effect there. Number two, I think, is talent. And this is the ever present. I know it's a major Digital Lancashire theme and thread that runs through every conversation. Finding people that necessarily don't live in Burnley and environs to actually want to work in Burnley rather than work in Manchester or Preston or Leeds. And I think then the next thing that we face, which is probably something that's easier for us to challenge and tackle, is how businesses communicate, network and agglomerate and work together to get the best out of networks. And if I mentioned earlier on, we're looking at our value proposition, and to expand on what I mean by that, we're really looking at our service set, what we actually do, what we offer, whether we present ourselves as a broad, I won't say full service agency, but a wide digital agency, or a much more specialized business that's got a higher up the value chain, more specialist, more focused, expertise driven service. So by doing that, it means working more with partners that we know are trusted, that are the best at what they do, as opposed to generalists. And I think in a place like Lancashire, where businesses don't really work together, don't network, don't share a sense of community, that agglomeration doesn't take place. So, who do we know that's great at doing video? Who do we know that's great at doing motion graphics? Who do we know that's great at doing paid search for fashion? Where are those networks? I think that they're harder to create and identify in a place like Lancashire, and increasingly harder to identify in a place like Burnley. If you want to work with people that are close, we all like buying local. So we all want to work with people that we can travel to, meet for coffee, meet for beer, as opposed to be looking for those skills in Camden or in Deansgate.
Yeah, to be honest, it's almost like you've had a sneak peek at my notes, Leon, because there's a lot of things there that actually I think are really pertinent, and things that I really wanted to get under the skin of. So I'm genuinely really pleased that you've broached some of those subjects already. But Liz, if I can come to you about, so the key things there, the three areas were around the perception of Lancashire, around talent, and around communication between those organisations. Is that agreeable in your experience with the businesses you work with when you're in the Landmark?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's tricky. Leon, coming from a business point of view and a personal point of view, you can imagine that we see so many different types of businesses through the door, but I think the perception thing is a really big one. And I think that's where the bondholder networking particularly, and everyone's sort of paying into this pool of businesses that want to make Burnley a better place to live and to work and to create this value added thing, about everyone just having each other's backs. And I think changing those perceptions outwardly is a start, but it's a huge task. So everyone's sort of championing what they're doing themselves in their own businesses and putting those messages to the forefront, I think is pretty critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And this perception of Lancashire, it turns out I lied before and I said I wasn't going to get too heavily into the Lancashire narrative, but I think it's an important point. But putting it in the context of, I suppose, this Lancashire identity, the perception of where does Burnley fit into that? Because Leon mentioned before that traditionally it's a manufacturing town. It's traditional services. So I'm going to come to you with this one, Adam, because of the business support role.
Yeah.
If Burnley were to hang its hat on this in this Lancashire narrative, what bit of Lancashire is Burnley? Not just geographically, but when people think of Burnley in a digital context. What is it? I suppose what is it people think of, if anything, and ideally, what do we want them to think of?
Yeah, well, we, as far as kind of, like I said, the manufacturing element of it, there's quite a lot of manufacturing companies locally that are using getting into robotics and using big data as part of that as well. Because like I've part of my job is to kind of bring together the different programs. So we've been in touch with Digit Me Too, at UCLan, and the big data stuff that they do, and managing run times on machines and things like that. So I suppose from our point of view, it's been a little bit. There's been a lot of work around finding the small digital businesses, the people that are just getting on with it. Because from our point of view, we tend to hear about them when they've got an issue or they need extra help. So I think part of what we are kind of trying to do as far as the sort of digital landscape's concerned is actually get into it and get the businesses to help the businesses to sell themselves really, and get them to shout up and get them to show us what Burnley is all about as well.
Sorry to interrupt you, Adam, but just to sort of jump in and support that, it's difficult because when people say digital businesses, how digital does a business need to be considered a digital business? So that's a really open thing, isn't it?
If I can just expand on that a little bit, sorry. We have this conversation when we've had informal discussions, and we've said, what is Digital Lancashire? I mean, I have other friends here in the group here that work in businesses that have digital presences. Some of my friends here are actually in agencies that definitely think of themselves as digital. But what about the big employers? What about the larger businesses that have digital services, that have technology? I think that definition is really, really important. It's a great point.
Yeah, and it's also one of the great big challenges we've had at Digital Lancashire is how do you define digital? We can explore that later, but what I would say is, again, manifesto, plug. There is a little bit of discussion around how we consider what digital means in the context of these discussions, and I think it's really critical. So adding to what you mentioned earlier on, and Liz, if I can bring it to you, Ben, where Leon before mentioned about, we touched on the perception and this sense of identity and or heritage. He went on to talk about talent. So if I can thinking in along the lines of skills and talent, and think about my original question a couple of questions ago, which was around what are the challenges specific to Burnley in terms of recruiting students, specifically on those digital or tech courses? Are there any obvious barriers to entry that you can identify or have picked up on?
I think the natural affinity for people to get out of Burnley is not easy to overcome. So there's this concept of the brain drain or needing to get out to the big lights of the city. I know Leon mentioned that, and I know that Dave Walker is on the call as well. We've talked about this quite a lot. This concept around not loving your town is very true. They come to college here, but as soon as they've got their quals here, they're off. I think the second element I would definitely say is the HE offer. So what it looks like post A levels or post level 3 qualifications. And I know that's increasing, and we're working hard in terms of some of our university offers, as well as degree apprenticeships, and what UCLan are doing in this area as well. I think what we're finding is that the students who have got aspirations feel like they have to leave. And I would definitely argue as well that one of the barriers is around. It sounds like I'm reading this off a script, and it isn't. From an apprenticeship point of view, is that even pre-COVID, there was a lot of change in apprenticeships in terms of what people would take and levy payments and what standard apprenticeships were, and what does a digital marketing apprentice look like? What does an infrastructure technician? And I found in my work doing some of the work on the digital marketing apprenticeships is that some of the qualifications that were set up weren't fit for purpose. So because digital, by its very definition, is evolving all the time and changing all the time, education doesn't evolve as quickly. And we tend to keep to a qualification and a standard that's set for 5 years, or it's not going to be reviewed until 2023. But there's been a massive shift in what digital look like. So for instance, I'll give you an example, sorry to harp on, but one of the examples was they were talking about we were talking about the iPhone 6 in one of the pre-assessments. Now, the irony is, and the picture of the iPhone 6, like they've just launched iPhone 12, and we're still talking about iPhone 6. So that kind of sums up education. If I'm honest, we're not particularly fast. I think we call ourselves the tortoise. I think in a polite way, but yeah, I think that's a challenge for us, and I think that can then spills into industry.
Yeah, but would you suggest that's endemic more of academia in general and curricula, maybe not perhaps a Burnley issue? This is just education more widely, that it's difficult to enact the speed of change in a curricular framework than it is to in a context of private sector and business.
I think yes. What as a short answer, I think the long answer is that Burnley's got a very specific, like I say, a heritage, like people have said about manufacturing, engineering. They are, and aerospace has been hit like massively in this season, hasn't it? So like my dad works at what was Safran, and now I work at Safran, and my granddad worked at this place. It's just that heritage of this is what you would do. So the digital elements or some of the digital skills aren't necessarily, they haven't got the same kind of kudos in the town as we would like, maybe.
Interesting. Just to pick on a point you referred to just a little earlier on about people not living in town or wanting to lured by the bright lights of wherever else that is, but Burnley. Is that a misperception? Is there actually a good culture in Burnley, do you think? And if there is, why? How is that not being picked up? And I'm going to pick on you on this one, Liz, if that's all right. Just because in terms of the business at work at Landmark, I'd imagine there's some fascinating, interesting, and exciting companies that come through.
Yeah, I mean, even from a personal point of view, I think it's difficult. So I remember when I was studying, I did my degree in media and production, so not really linked directly to what I'm doing now, but my initial thoughts when I left was I need to go to Media City to find a job. I didn't even think to look locally, but I think that comes down to, again, just awareness of what's actually going on in the area. But back then I wouldn't have known, oh, well, I can tap into bondholders, I can tap into Digital Lancashire, I can tap into X, Y, or Z. You know, you're just not aware of it at that age, I don't think. So if we're talking about straight out of education, you sort of have it ingrained into you from a very early age. Again, I think it comes down to the heritage of the town that, you know, again, if your mum's a teacher, you tend to go into teaching. If your dad's an engineer, you might go down the engineering route. From a Landmark perspective, we tend to get a lot of people that commute to cities that, especially now the big offices aren't open, are quite happy to be at home, not have the commute, be able to work remotely. And I think that's how it's going to stay for the foreseeable, to be honest. So hopefully we'll see things pick up locally, and that's what we're hoping for anyway. Yeah,
interesting. And just if a fascinating point you just picked on about the workplace, which is a conversation for 4 o'clock. Plug. There's another event, the hybrid workplace, where we're actually going to discuss those exact things. But coming back to this, there's been a mention of bondholders. There's a mention of Digital Lancashire. So if I can ask you, Adam, in regards to the current support that's available, and whether that is informal support, whether it's peer support, what and where do people generally tend to gravitate towards if they're looking for guidance or support in Burnley in the digital sector?
Yeah, we work quite closely with Boost Business Lancashire and the stuff that they do as far as specific digital supports going on. We also kind of we'll do direct contact with people as well. So it's people are coming for digital support directly to us or into Boost, and we'll cross refer between ourselves. So we'll do our own events as well. We normally do a Burnley Business Week where we try to have a strong digital element as part of that as well. Just referring back to the bondholders as well, I was having a look the other day about that. And we've got I think there's about a quarter of businesses in there that are digital, directly digital. And then obviously, like we were saying before, about the kind of manufacturing people and businesses that'll have a digital element as well. But yeah, I think there's about 200 bondholder members at the minute, so there's quite a good portion of people that are digital. So I think part of what we do is just to try and keep that open dialogue as well, and have that informal, WhatsApp message where we'll share stuff that's going on with Boost, or stuff that's going on with central government as well, digital and funding wise, and everything in between really. So it's a mixture of everything, kind of direct and casual and sort of partner referral.
Which
I think what is, oh sorry.
Oh no, sorry, go on, Liz.
Interrupting you. I was just going to see if I could bring Patrick Byrne into the conversation. Paddy is on somewhere. So Paddy, as I mentioned before, is our resident Barclays Eagle. So he's based at the Landmark sort of a couple of days a week when he's able to come in. They're not just allowed yet, but he's doing everything remotely. But that's a real coup for the town, is that, because that's such a unique partnership. Eagle Labs, if no one's familiar, Paddy will give you a little bit of an overview. But basically, they tend to be based in big cities. They do things like helping with business incubation, access to funding, maker spaces, all that sort of thing. They're heavily digital. They've got a whole Digital Eagles army that sort of roll out events and training and support for digital businesses, and to help upskill companies that aren't necessarily using a lot of digital. But yeah, we managed to sort of carve that unique partnership with them for Burnley, and it's proving to be pretty successful, and hopefully once we can have physical events and start bringing people together again, that'll just continue to roll. Paddy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. You're on mute at the minute. There you go.
Thanks, Liz. I think you've covered everything there really, so well done. Yeah, we're really excited to be in Burnley. So we started about this time last year, Liz, wasn't it? Roughly.
Yeah.
But from now onwards, we're trying to make it a real presence for ourselves and drive the digital thing, the agenda, by getting in touch with like-minded people, like everyone probably on this call now.
Yeah. And I was going to say, rolling the sort of Digital Burnley, having a sort of central focus point for that and keeping it going.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of our what we want to work together with the Landmark and everyone else. So yeah, we offer lots of support through that, mentoring, coaching, access to finance, access to the contacts that Barclays have, and all the other 25, 26 Eagle Labs across the country. So we've got a vast network and community that we just want to engage people with. So yeah, I'm really excited just to listen to what's going on, and then hopefully get involved in a few working parties and see how we can really drive it. And as Leon said, and a few others, about working together collectively, and everyone understanding what the goals and aims are. So I think with everyone on the call today, we could possibly get that sorted.
Thank you, Paddy. It's fascinating because I know, Leon, you mentioned that there's this, perhaps one of the issues is around the networking or the communicating or that sense of unity and togetherness. But the fact that the bondholders is such a strong community, and that there's a WhatsApp group, so it seems, I think, either there is a communication issue between those different organisations, or you're just really being quite harsh on a sense, because there does seem to be a sense of cohesion and community, certainly from a Preston perspective looking in. I'd be interested in terms of the I suppose, where Digital Lancashire fits into that narrative, and I'm going to be complete. Please feel free to speak openly. I've got my thick skin on today. So if my questions around what and where have Digital Lancashire helped or supported or not done, and where can we perhaps fit into that dialogue? Because I mentioned earlier that Lancashire's challenge is in identity. We've discussed that today. There's this very, we've got a number of councils, a number of identities, and all of these things. And whereas I think that polycentric sense of identity is quite strong and it is unique, it can also be a real challenge. It can be a real threat to us. So in terms of Digital Lancashire, where do you see us helping, and do you think amongst the Burnley digital community there's a good understanding of who we are? I realise I'm putting myself in front of the firing squad here.
That's for me, yeah, Tom.
Yeah. I'll go, because I saw you've sort of nodding to that one, Leon.
Yeah, cool. So you know, I've been following along Digital Lancashire since the beginning. I think is it in its 4th or 5th year now as an entity. Yeah. If I was honest, I think that a lot of people in Burnley and up this end of the M65 would probably, if asked, would probably say that Digital Lancashire really is a Preston, Lancaster-centric organisation in the main. I think that's where there probably is a hub of activity. I think Lancaster has got a very vibrant community. I think it's had co-working spaces longer, and the landmarks come along in Burnley to start to fill that gap, which is great. Preston is obviously the administrative capital and it's the city of the county. So, you know, I think anybody that's pragmatic will understand why that is the case. Burnley has the bondholders. I think there is already that network where people get together, albeit, you know, the frequency of bondholder activity, it's only probably once a quarter in normal times. Obviously, there's been nothing for most this year. So it's not an active network by any stretch. So, you know, can a town, the question I would ask, it's questions rather than answers at this point, you know, can a town like Burnley actively support events and activities where people visit, where people come along, what can we run that bring 10, 15, 20 people at a time into those rooms to create a conversation? Because I think you need those conversations, you need activity, you need people getting together as a group to form it. But Burnley has to do it itself. And the people of Burnley have to identify those needs themselves and bring that group together.
Thank you, Leon. Appreciate your honesty. And Adam, if I can just sort of similar question to it in terms of engagement with us at Digital Lancashire and the useful value of that. Where do you see that going, or rather, I suppose, framed another way, if how can Digital Lancashire help Burnley more effectively?
Yeah, I think I agree with what there's Digital Lancashire. It's got Preston and Lancaster and everything in between. But I think, yeah, from our point of view, I think help us kind of find some interesting subjects that people would find relevant for then us to kind of put out our businesses and bang the drum on a local basis, but then to highlight some of the good stuff that's happening in the rest of the county as well. So obviously we've got kind of you plan. So I think it'd be good to kind of see it working as an east and west together rather than just an east and west Lancashire sort of separately. But yeah, I think some kind of some good support with some good ideas that we can promote locally to our good kind of digital community, and maybe bring some people out of the woodwork a little bit that maybe are just busy getting on with things, and they're not the natural networkers. You know, they're not out there with a business pitch and business card and whatever else. It just kind of ideas around what works in the west of the county, around getting digital people to come out and actually sell themselves, whether it be in a kind of a different way rather than, you know, not like a BNI networking group. Everybody's got the 60-second elevator pitch and everything like that. But yeah, kind of bring some ideas over from what's worked over in the West, and to get people together, like Leon said, and get people showcasing.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're some way to help in this issue that Leon identified around communication or networking together. So, okay then. I'm mindful not to focus on. We've talked a lot about issues and challenges and problems, but actually each of our clusters have incredible people, incredible companies working within them, doing amazing things. So I'm interested to try and work out in Burnley who are the champions. What are the success stories? Who are those ambassadors in the region where, when people think about Burnley, it's like, oh, you should speak to whoever that is. So Liz, if I come to you, if you were to put on the spot and you were to extol the amazing digital virtues of Burnley, and I had to speak to maybe between 1 and 3 people or companies, who are they?
Oh, well, if anyone knows our director, and I'm probably biased, but Mark Crabtree tends to pop up in most conversations from that point of view, and he sort of is just connected to so many different things. He started up the Landmark after sort of thinking about the fact that when he started his business, there was nowhere sort of him to go for support or advice. He did everything from his mum's kitchen table and then his attic for a time. And so he wanted to create a space where businesses could go and sort of grow and thrive and access the people they needed to access. So that's where the Landmark came from. But in terms of his other business, AMS Neve, again, if no one's familiar, we manufacture professional audio equipment that you might see in music studios and big film studios. So huge digital mixing consoles that can mix, well, they have mixed sort of Oscar-winning soundtracks, and Mark himself has won 2 technical Oscars. He was the chair of bond holders for 8 years. So he's a big local champion and just is really keen to give people a leg up where he can. But then I guess fellow panelist Leon is up there somewhere. Shock horror. But no, just doing great things himself for his own business. You know, most people are aware of Door 4, doing great things. But also just keen to, again, just focus locally and see where we can help other local businesses to thrive, really.
And Leon, because you were name checked there, you're not allowed to mention yourself on this answer, but same question. Who are those? Who's amongst the Burnley champions? And not just have to be individuals; it can be companies, organisations. Anyone spring to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to look at John at Connect here, who are pointing at the panelists. I know it's an easy out here, but you know, this is a business that have an international presence, that are very much a true digital software business. That's at the heart of what they do. I think just to touch on what Liz and Adam were saying there, I think what Digital Burnley and Digital Lancashire probably needs to do is try and find those businesses that aren't agencies, that aren't B2B sales companies, that don't have an imperative to network. If I'm looking, you know, look at Sean and Dave in this group, and you, Tom, we're all similar businesses. We sell to other businesses, so we go out and sit in boardrooms, events, day in, day out. That's what we do. But if I look at John, you know, we've met a number of times, and that business isn't looking to try and sell to any of the other businesses in this room. So that kind of business doesn't necessarily gravitate towards events unless there's real value that's aimed at the people in those, where if it's CPD, if it's learning, you know, what can we do to create content that's relevant for firms like Connect Childcare?
And if I can bring you back into the conversation, Ben, in terms of in working at Burnley College and any sort of the external organisations, are there any particular individuals or organisations? In essence, what you're providing me with here is a great hit list of who I need to talk to next as well. Some great ideas coming up.
Well, I think a lot of them have been mentioned. We've worked closely with Dave and the team at Plus 24 for a long time, and continue to do that. In terms of some of the other people, I think we're increasingly doing a little bit more work with Sean. I know that we've had some conversations there, Sean at Redfern, and looking at where that develops. And who else have we been working with recently? From a more, do you know, we said we talked about that definition of what digital means. Some of the more IT companies, I suppose, but we obviously try and cross those things together, because we know there's a crossover. We've worked closely with Chess and Serian, and they've supported a lot of the stuff that we've done in terms of our security elements and the development around that in digitally as well. So yeah, some great organisations there. But again, increasingly, like we said before, there are the digitisation and robotics at some of our engineering companies. We've worked closely with the guys at Safran, at Paradigm. We're working on a project currently with a group of engineering companies and advanced manufacturing, looking at the digitization of some of their processes and what that looks like. So in that cluster, now you put me on time, Paradigm are in that, Safran are in that, High Chrome and BCW. So yeah, so 4 big players in engineering that are looking at digitization of their skill sets as well. So yeah,
brilliant. And I suppose really one of the keys to, one of the things to crack here is how how do we uncover those businesses? How do we get through to them? And like you mentioned, Leon, is that they're not looking, they don't naturally fall into the same networking circles, particularly because maybe they're not looking to develop their pipeline in that direction. So how do we collectively in this room, and also we at Digital Lancashire, how do we engage with, how do we talk to and discover these businesses? And that's to the whole panel, whoever has the best idea, because there's a number of things I'm sure that are possible.
I'll jump in there, Tom, and I'll let somebody else follow. I think, you've got to start with saying, well, what are the pains that these people face in there? Who are the people in those organisations that are best aligned to Digital Lancashire, Digital Burnley? And just to mention there, Ben mentioned Serian, who are actually a Pendle-based business. And I think that's another offshoot to this conversation. Where's that dotted line that determines Burnley? So I won't go there. What are the people? Who are the people inside these organisations? What are their roles? What do they want to know? What do they want to learn? If I was a head of operations, we mentioned Safran there. What would make me give up half a day or a couple of hours of my busy day, where I probably have KPIs that I need to meet and I need to tick an awful lot of boxes in a global organisation? What would make me not just give up my time, but come along and take the time from others for my own benefit? This has got to be a beneficial thing. It's not an altruistic organisation. I've got to get something out of this.
Thank you, Len. I'd mute myself then. Absolute classic Zoom error. So some really important things though, and really, I suppose, identifying the pain points or where that conversation begins. There's a great list of people and organisations that I'm definitely keen to have a conversation with those people. I think what I'd like to steer the conversation with is thinking more about answers, solutions. We started to, it's like, how do we find and uncover these businesses? But if we take Leon's 3 things of perception of Lancashire, talent and communication, assuming we had our great Digital Lancashire magic wand, fixes all things digital, no matter of money, no matter of time, this is how we fix it. So in the first instance, this is a biggie. I'm not saying we're going to crack it now, and I'm going to put an idea forwards. How do we fix the perception of Lancashire? What I will say on that as a precursor to perhaps any thoughts is, if people haven't yet investigated the bid for Lancashire to become the capital of culture for 2025, investigate, have a look. Lancashire2025.com. There's the team who are coordinating this have managed to reimagine the boundaries of Lancashire, which you mentioned earlier. And where are these dotted lines that separate Pendle from Burnley, Preston from South Ribble, which is weird. We're a very parochial place. We know this, but Lancashire 2025 itself reimagines the county as a digital city, with a place of specialisms, not of specific geography, with a sense of broad. So you have the coast, you have the city. So it's quite broad. So I would urge people to explore that. It might at least begin conversations into how on earth do we solve this perception of Lancashire. Are there any additional thoughts, Alex? I realise that is a whole other conference in itself, and not just a question in a forum about Burnley.
It's a curveball, that one, Tom, isn't it?
I know. I'm so sorry. Well, do you know what? We'll move on. I'll let people think about the Lancashire narrative, because I think we've already established. I think this sense of perception, sense of identity, this sense of manufacturing or traditional services. In regards to talent, I know we've mentioned this about people not living the town, but how do we fix that, particularly in Burnley? What can we do? As I say, this is if time and money were no issue. What things solve that?
I think about it's about kind of retain. I know it's an easy thing to say, but it's about retaining the talent as well. Like Ben was saying, people graduate to get qualifications, and straight away they're looking for somewhere else to go. And I know that there's a lot of housing development going on around locally. I know it's not kind of digital related, but we've got things like Burnley Social, which is aimed at kind of the young people in Burnley, and it's about sharing the different events and different bits of activities that are going on. Obviously, kind of pre-COVID, because things are weird as they are now. But I think it's things like that just showing people that actually there's things to do and there's reasons to stay here. I mean, it's largely rural Burnley. There's a lot of kind of history and heritage and really nice parkland and things like that. So I think it's about retaining that talent is really kind of coming together and showing that Burnley is a really good place to live, work and play, really. Yeah. Which I suppose that kind of ties in with some digital updates that we've been doing as well from a council point of view. But yeah, it's a lot of kind of, I think we've got the student accommodation there now as well, which has got a lot of kind of creative open spaces so I think it's kind of coming together, and I think we need to keep working on it and to try and keep young people here locally.
Absolutely. I think. And Ben, you look like you're going to add to that.
Yeah, I was, and I think one of the things that we've done as a college is we've done a lot of things around engineering advisory boards or HR networks and all those kind of things, and we've tried to bring players in the sector around the table and say, well, how can we as an education staff, we've got a massive amount of the young people in this area eating out of our hands. So what would people want to do? What businesses would want to work with us, and what kind of things are you going to be looking for? How do you want to be involved in things like our events? Do you want to be involved in some of our like careers in advice? Because I think we would naturally, like I said, education stays on a trajectory until a government mandate, not really anything else other than that. So what I'm conscious of is that if the world is changing digitally, which it is, we need businesses that are telling us that. So one of the things that we've talked about is about maybe a digital advisory network or whatever else that looks like, that kind of shapes our curriculum, but also that we can kind of say, well, we've got these people here. So for instance, I'll give you an example. There's a new T-levels qualification that's kind of out, and that's causing a whole heap of headaches because they've got to do a massive amount of work experience as part of that qualification. Now, getting students doing work experience that isn't making brews and doing photocopying is difficult in itself, but when you've got that's going to be meaningful work experience for a good massive about 500 students in this town, it's quite difficult. So we could in theory probably look at some of that kind of stuff, and that's certainly something that I would love to propose as something going forward, that we as a college would kind of would want to. We've got a massive resource in our hands in terms of students that we want to work with the employees regarding.
Yeah, interesting. It sort of fits into one of the things we've been discussing at the board at Digital Lancashire is putting together youth advisory committees or those sorts of networks to make sure that because we feel we've got a good handle on private and public sector, but actually from young people themselves, the issues that impact and affect them, I think for us there's value in creating some kind of committee there. Just mindful of time, so just before I open up the floor for questions, just continuing on from those things, how can we fix the I suppose the talent thing and the mention of more meetups? And I'd spotted there in the chat, Liz, you'd mentioned about Tech Tuesdays and the sorts of events that would appeal to, it's a sort of bright lights and cities kinds of events where it makes you want to stick around to learn more or meet those exciting people who are going to inspire and encourage innovation.
I think so. It's funny. So the EGO Labs thing, and I know I keep sort of name checking EGO Labs, but it is a massive deal. Because as you said, the sort of bright lights of the cities and all these exciting things that are going on, they are just experts in throwing these things together at the drop of a hat, whereas we're all busy doing our day jobs and it becomes a big organisational thing to pull in speakers and organise Eventbrite and everything else. So we're really lucky in that we have access to their whole network across the nation of speakers and people that can come in and be experts and provide expert opinions on all sorts of topics. But we sort of trialled a couple of their events called AI Frenzies that are obviously all around artificial intelligence and how that's implemented in different businesses and different industries. And we hosted a live one here. It was right at the beginning of the year or the end of last year. I completely lost track of time now. But we had about 35 people, of which I knew 2, which is unheard of in Burnley because everyone kind of knows everybody, or the same faces will crop up. And I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but not everybody wants to get out and network. I'm certainly not a natural networker. It terrifies me. And I know a lot of people just aren't into it, especially the type of guys, and it usually is guys, not being funny, the coders or the software writers or the people that tend to get the headphones on and sort of get busy doing all the background stuff. They're not naturally social creatures. I know I'm sort of quoting everyone with the same brush there, but all those sorts of people that were attracted to that particular event were people that wouldn't necessarily normally come out, and I had to kick them out the bar at the end of the night because they were all just talking shop, which was great to see. But I think just providing things for people to come out to. Leon and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago and just talking about how we might start the ball rolling, and can't really sort of put it on one person to keep things ticking over because everybody's running their businesses. But I think just providing the opportunity for people to come out and to see what's going on, to meet people, to have conversations they wouldn't ordinarily have, is pretty critical, really. And at the minute, everyone's kind of stuck indoors, so any opportunity they've got to sort of socialise can only be a good thing. So yeah, we're looking at Tech Tuesdays just because it's kind of memorable, and it just gives a steady flow of events regularly for people to sort of come to if they want to dip in and out, or come to every single one. But Paddy's going to be the guy leading on that. So if you've got any sort of topics that you think would be interesting, anything that's particularly critical to your business specifically, or that within your sort of peer groups are a talking point, just drop Paddy an email and he will know a speaker that can come and speak. And likewise, we want to pull in local businesses to also appear at those events. And hopefully it'll take off how we think it will.
Yeah, and of course, if and where Digital Lancashire can help with that, because those are the sorts of events that we would absolutely love to either facilitate or do or support or join those dots. It's perfectly in the remit of what we aim to do, which is really make everybody's experience in digital, whether it's for themselves or their business, a better and a more enhanced one that's productive for everyone. Just before we go to the Q&A, just want to signpost people, if you haven't yet got the chat pane up on the side, there's all kinds of good discussions happening while we have these conversations, and that's whether that's links to fully funded programs at Edge Hill, whether it's to the Lancashire Cyber Foundry, so where they can help explore ideas. There's a ton of good stuff happening there. The ideal, the sort of thing we would hope would have appeared in there. So thank you everyone for contributing to that element of discussion. And just a quick plug, you mentioned there, Liz, about diversity, whether that is at networking events or in industry, because actually there is in Lancashire, for example, there's the digital sector in Lancashire is 85% male, or certainly the research we've done thus far on it. So we have a session tomorrow. We called it Through the Looking Glass, which is all around diversity and inclusion in the digital sector. So certainly there's some key points we'll be looking to explore there. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. So there's a raft of notes and questions that I have, but does anyone have any particular either points of note or questions that they would like to fire to the panel or us at DL? And if you can either unmute and jump straight in, or you can use a raise hand feature.
Tom?
Yes.
Can I just chip in? It's a conversation that's happened a lot today, and historically we've had this conversation for years as Digital Burnley and the wider Lancashire problem around the talent and the availability of digital skills within the area. I think it's become even more fiercely competitive from my experience in the last few years. I'm getting lots of requests through directly to our staff. Come and work here. This place is great to work. You know, we've got this going on. We've got that going on. And that's something I've not necessarily experienced historically in business. Is it something that, and is this possible to the panel? Can we collaborate to help recruitment in general as an industry rather than it being dog eat dog?
That is a brilliantly. It's a great question. It's a useful one. So I can see the panel are cogitating. I can see Leon's probably the closest to an answer there.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I share exactly that same issue, Dave. I think we're on the same page there. You know, some of my staff tell me that happens. I think that's the nature of the industry. I don't have an answer specifically fully formed. I'll reshape it a little bit, if I may. I think one of the things that we see as if I can call us a provincial business, I don't like the term, but we're not in a city centre, so we are a provincial business, is we found that a lot of when we want senior staff with experience, we're finding that quite a lot of people that have been working in a city who want a quality role in a good business have actually agreed to come in to join Door 4, really to cut out the commute. You know, we've got a new member of staff joining us that is would have been working in a city centre that just doesn't want the commute anymore. My fellow director Sean joined us from a major global agency, so that it wasn't driving into Princess Street in Manchester in and out every day, taking 2 to 4 hours of his day. So I view it a different way. How do we make ourselves competitive and make sure that people see working in Burnley is a viable option? Burnley itself, one thing that we've not really touched on, I think, is a way better value place to work than it was 10 years ago. I think we're miles and miles ahead of where we were 10 years ago. There's a better kind of bar/restaurant culture. There's more to do in town. The town is a better place to be. I think the presence of the likes of Digital Lancashire, bondholders, Landmark means that Burnley is seen as a more viable town. And I think just to add, the fact that we have a Premier League football team really raises the value of the town. I think the profile of the town is way advanced. So it's not a direct answer, Dave, to that question, but it's just a slightly different take on it, I think.
I agree. We are fantastic in Burnley in that we can attract people who don't want to commute. You know, we've been very fortunate. We've got, we talked about the brain drain earlier. We actually employ 3 people from Manchester who come to Burnley to work, and that's, I feel like that bucks the trend, and I'm sure we're all starting to do that a little bit more. But do we need to spread that message? Because if we look at post-COVID, perhaps location is less of an issue. So therefore, if we're infighting for staff, are we not going to be detrimental to our industry in Lancashire? And we go back to that regional thing that you mentioned earlier, Tom. Is it possible? Can we work together? Can Digital Lancashire almost facilitate the raising of the profile of digital within Lancashire as a whole to recruit not just from within Lancashire and encourage new skills, but can we bring skills from other areas and regions to Burnley?
I think it's a great point. I've made a note and I've boxed that note so I don't lose it in my. Because I've scribbled so much in this session alone. So it's definitely a conversation. And what I'll probably do, David, if it's all right, I'll probably pick up the conversation beyond the chat with you at some point over the coming week or so. I think it's a real fascinating line of inquiry to, like you say, it's the COVID, the talk there was around the lure of big lights, and really there is like Leon alluded to, there's definitely an emphasis on the value of where we live in terms of cost of living, in terms of opportunities. And as a slight aside, I see Preston following in Burnley's footsteps. Certainly in the last 10 years, the city life culture has changed dramatically. There are more things to do. There are more places, there are more things to experience, without a doubt. So I think Lancashire is slowly getting its act together. I'm really hopeful now. Listen, people, I'm going to bring it to a close because we're just approaching the end of our time here. But I first of all want to thank everyone on the panel. So to Leon, to Liz, to Adam, to Ben for letting me pick their brains with some questions. I'll be honest with you, they didn't see coming. I briefed them on one thing and asked them other things. So they were put on the spot. But I do feel that we've been able to get a good, honest appraisal, which is what I really wanted. And I think fundamentally, absolutely critically for me, is that the conversation about Burnley doesn't just stop here and doesn't just become an event that we did for Reboot to then be discussed in X amount of weeks, months time. I think the issues around communication, around networking, about that togetherness, and working to, like David mentioned there, working to better extol the virtues of Lancashire and working within the digital sector within our region. There are some real key strong things we have there. So thanks again for all the panel for giving it their time today. I've certainly learned a lot as a Preston lad. I thought I knew Burnley quite well. I'm there quite a lot. Turns out I've learned a lot more. And I'd like to thank everyone else also for attending and for making the chat pane on the right hand side the most active we've had yet, with some really good stuff there. Joe, our events and marketing exec, Joe Dutson, she'll be following up with an email, so just keep an eye out for that, because we will be looking for a bit of feedback, and not just generic feedback that can be scored and put in a final column. You know, things that genuinely will help us at Digital Lancashire provide a better service for you, the digital community in Lancashire. So final reminder, have a quick look at the other events that are happening over the rest of today, tomorrow and Friday. There's a whole raft of things going on, and some really fascinating talks around futurology, around diversity, around inclusion. There's an event where we get all the leading support organisations, like marketing, digital, creative Lancashire, in a room to discuss this key thing that Leon picked up on, which is about communication, better networking together, better aligning our goals and making sure we hit them more effectively. And thank you as well to our partners and sponsors for Reboot, ABGI, and all the other partners who have helped either lend their time or put forward the names of the speakers who are making these events so good. So thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully I'll speak to you all at some point soon. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.